Imagine being 5 years old, stuck in prison. Not prison, Catholic school, being disrespected and degraded every day by these mean and hateful nuns. And what made it worse for Tina is that her family was constantly serving in school. Her mother seemed to alter boys' uniforms, her brother cleaned the school lawn, and her father chauffeured the nuns all over town. This would cause Tina to view the world from a toughened lens. And what that meant was, well, just try mistreating her. You'll find out. Pretty is as pretty does. You have to be pretty on the inside. Beauty on the outside fades. That's what Agnes used to say to Tina while Tina was rolling her eyes. Never give yourself 100% to a man. Keep something for yourself. Don't live a restricted life. Find something that is your own. No man needs to know everything about you. No man needs that much control. Don't give away your power. Live your own life. The things that Agnes used to say were just not heard from women in those days. Most women were too afraid. You would have to understand the way it was back then for a woman. A black woman at that? Remember the movie Color Purple? That's how it was for black women when Agnes grew up. People's behaviors are usually an indication of their background and experiences. So if you really look into what Agnes was saying, she was speaking from pain. And it's only the maternal thing to do to want to protect your children from the pain and restrictions that you went through. No, Agnes was not your typical woman of this time. A self-taught seamstress and an entrepreneur. She created embroidery with beads that was very unique and creative and decadent, not meant for casual wear. Agnes also did upholstery, wallpaper, painting, and decorating. She was definitely a woman of the arts and a woman ahead of her time. Feminist, a person who believes in the social, political, and economical equality of the sexes. That was Agnes. It's stated that Tina doesn't speak much about her father, so it's not clear if he had much to do with her life. What is known is that he was very attractive, light-skinned, and athletic. Relatives say he was an excellent student, popular, and a people's person. He was also fluent in French, worked as a longshoreman, and was deaf in one ear as a result of a mine explosion. Tina BEYONCE'S was born on January the 4th in 1954 in Galveston, Texas, the youngest of 7 children. The BEYONCE'S, both French-speaking Creoles, were a very loving and welcoming family, whose house was known as the neighborhood spot where all the kids loved to come and play. They made sure that their family ate together every day, even the teenagers. Both sides of the family would also come together at the BEYONCE'S for special occasions such as holidays. Tina would later find out that the reason her family did so much for the school was because they were bartering. It was the only way they could pay for their education. This was very hurtful to a young Tina, and she still gets choked up whenever she talks about it. Tina would state that she became a warrior at 5. I refused to let the nuns take my spirit. I decided I would never let someone tell me who I am or what I was. I had to fight for myself. As a result of this experience, Tina became very tough-minded, assertive, and could sometimes come across as defensive. She was known to have a hot head with her boyfriends as she became a no-nonsense, upfront person. She also took after her mother, who was also outspoken. Church was very important to the BEYONCE'S, and Tina, who was very popular, was always known to be surrounded by people on the front steps after service. Always animated and entertaining. Always had a good story to tell. She was amazingly beautiful, light-skinned with a huge afro wig. She was also very stylish and always wore the best clothes. But don't let the beauty fool you. People who knew Tina knew not to cross her. She had a defiant temper. While in junior high school, Tina was actually in a singing group trio called the Veil Tones. Her mother used to sew and make the outfits for the performances. At one of the showcases, they actually made it to the final where people in the record industry were coming to see them, but one of the girls' mothers wouldn't allow her to be in the group anymore, so they didn't show up. Tina would also become the leader of a cover band, but it didn't last very long. Tina had great love for fashion. She was a seamstress, a designer. In school, her and her nephew Johnny made all of their clothes, and they were always the best dressed. She even dressed all of her friends for the prom. Tina would graduate from Ball State in 1972, but she wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her life. What she did know is that she wanted to get out of Galveston, and she also knew that she wanted to have a career in beauty because it made women feel good about themselves. She would then find herself in Los Angeles, where she enrolled in community college and would take some courses. She then got a job at Worldwide Health Studios, which was a fitness gym, for 3 years. After that, she would move to Denver, where she did some modeling. In the dawn of civil rights, riots, lynchings, and desolate poverty lies the city of Gaston, Alabama, 55 miles from Birmingham. Matthew Knowles was born on January 9th, 1952, the parents Matthew and Lou Helen Knowles. He was one of 7 children. In contrast to the loving and close-knit BEYONCE'S, the Knowles were not a close-knit or loving family. While Tina had a close relationship with her mother, Matthew looked more up to his father. Matthew Sr., or Big Mac as he was called, stood over 6 feet tall and was almost 300 pounds. Big Mac was a produce truck driver by day and a volunteer firefighter by night. He was known for his amazing work ethic, battling fires late into the night and then showing up first thing in the morning for work. But in those days, work ethics didn't always translate to income, as the Knowles family lived very poor. Matthew states they used an outhouse for their bathroom. As a child, he would always hear his mom scolding his father over his income or lack thereof. Lou Helen was known for her hot temper, and she was quick to show it. She worked as a maid for a white family. She also handmade quilts and canned fresh goods on the side for extra money. She also went to school with Coretta Scott King. Matthew Sr. would often tell his son, "You want to get ahead in life in this world as a black man? Then pay your bills on time. Yeah, I got no money, but I got A1 credit." A1 credit, remember that, boy. Even though Matthew looked up to his father, he didn't feel very close to him, as his father was rarely home and was not very well connected to the family. Matthew's relationship with his mother was also very contentious. He was also not very well connected with his siblings, who often lived independent of their parents as well as each other. Matthew Knowles' painful childhood would have a big imprint on his life and would also have a big impact on how he would deal with people in the future. Despite the challenges and pain Matthew Knowles suffered in life, he would ultimately be defined by his supreme work ethic. Just like his father, Matthew will be one of several students who would be the first to integrate his middle school Litchfield and also his high school Gaston City High. He would sell candy in school, even talking to store clerk into giving him a discount for being a frequent buyer. He was tall, lanky, and good looking, and the ladies loved him. They used to call him Pool Stick. Matthew would parlay playing basketball in high school to a basketball scholarship to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and as usual, he was one of the first black students to enroll there. He would then continue his education at Fisk University, an elite black university in Nashville, where he would graduate in 1970 with degrees in both economics and business administration. After he graduated, he would soon move to Houston, working a variety of jobs before landing at Xerox Medical Systems as a salesman, who would eventually be promoted to their elite division, where he sold medical systems, most notably breast cancer detection and ultrasound technology. By 1981, he was driving a Jag, making a 6-figure salary, and had people working for him. He was known as a notoriously hard worker who was not an easy person to work for. You got all that? Let's proceed. Tina and Matthew met in 1978. By then, she worked as a secretary for a credit card company. Tina was at a party with the man who was one of Matthew's friends when he saw her. She had silky, smooth, long black hair with red streaks, caramel complexion, cherry red lipstick. She had a bad body too. Tina was that jelly thick. They had instant chemistry, and Matthew invited her to lunch. But when Matthew showed up to MasterCard on Monday afternoon and asked for Tina, there was no one there by that name. She got me. So it seemed. But guess who we seen downtown a year later with her fine ass? Tina. Hey you, pretty chick who works at MasterCard. Why you blow me off like that? Fool. First of all, can we get out the middle of the road? After they got up the street, Matthew said, "Why you tell me you work at MasterCard? You could have told me you wasn't interested." Fool. I told you I worked at Visa, not MasterCard. Next thing you know, They were engaged. Matthew loved the spice in Tina, but he did notice that she was guarded. There was just something about Matthew that Tina just didn't trust. She had that thing y'all women got. What's that? Women's intuition. Matthew and Tina Knowles would get married on January the 5th, 1980. But the day before the wedding, Tina's dad had a heart attack. The wedding proceeded, but the next day they would miss their flight for the honeymoon. So they decided to go back to Galveston so Tina could be with the father who was not doing good. But while Tina was in the hospital, Matthew called her crying saying his grandfather had died. Tina would leave briefly to attend the funeral, but by the time she returned, the mom was in intensive care. Woo, y'all get all that? Well, after things settled down, Tina wanted to get a job, but Matthew said no, take care of your parents, which was a blessing for Tina because unfortunately, her mother Agnes would pass away within 6 months. Tina didn't re-enter the workforce, which would be a decision she would later regret. She instead enrolled in a beauty school and became pregnant. After she became pregnant, her marriage took a turn for the worse. It's believed that this may have been when Matthew's infidelities came into the picture. Tina wanted to leave, but she had been out of the workforce for years. She felt utterly trapped. She was mad at herself, mad at Matthew, mad that she had allowed herself to become dependent on a man. Even though this was very common back then, this was not something that the daughter of Agnes considered for herself. The marriage became tumultuous. Matthew was always unhappy, never satisfied. It was apparent that Matthew was dealing with personal demons from his youth. He was quick to blow off the handle, and Tina, who was normally known to not take nothing from a man, didn't have her usual fight. It was just something about Matthew that changed her. She began to look at beauty school as her saving grace, so she became laser focused. After she graduated, she started a salon in her house. There was just still something that she saw in Matthew that kept her there, and she was hoping that the arrival of their new baby would change things. But if it didn't, she now at least had her business, and she was ready to move forward without Matthew if needed. Beyonce Giselle Knowles was born on September the 4th, 1981. Tina decided to name Beyonce after her maiden name BEYONCE'S because only one of her brothers had a son, and she wanted to preserve the family name. Tina's father, Loomis Beyonce, actually disapproved of the name, saying she's gonna be mad at you for giving her a last name. But Tina, overwhelmed with joy for her beautiful baby girl, disagreed. Matthew was also filled with joy to be a father, taking Beyonce wherever he went. But even Tina's immense love for her new baby would not deter her from her goal. She was determined to start her own business so she could be independent. After taking out a small business loan, she was able to open up her own beauty salon in 1985, which she would call Headliners. Tina states that she would take Beyonce to live with Matthew's mother so she could get her business going, which leads to some speculation as to why not leave her with Matthew. There are two theories floated by sources close to her that say she either kicked Matthew out for his infidelities or either he left for another woman. Her relatives state that Tina was a secretive person, so no info was certain. What is certain is that Tina could not run the business as well as keep Beyonce, who was 2 months old at the time, on her own. Business would start out slow, but was gradually going. Tina went to get Beyonce after 6 months, and whatever the circumstances were by this time, Matthew had returned as well, albeit still in hot water. Over the years, Tina's clientele would increase and her business would begin to thrive, with little Beyonce sweeping up hair for tips, and Tina would never allow herself to be dependent on anyone again.